In some traditions, the person giving a talk often kind of opens it with something like, welcome to my brothers and sisters in aging, sickness, and death. Just acknowledging the common experience of dukkha that we all have, and that most of us are coming to a place like a monastery or to a center where there's a practice tradition that is oriented towards starting to examine that and looking for ways to transcend our suffering. That's the motivation that most of us come with, looking for a bit of relief from difficulty, from our trials of our life, the trials of our existence, looking for a bit of peace, looking for a bit of happiness. And it motivates us to, it's a good motivator for us to look for a solution to the problems that we encounter, something more than just the normal ways of trying to escape the difficulties through distraction and sense gratification, and all the other ways that we seek relief from this underlying quality of dis-ease. So I would imagine most of us who are in this room right now are having that same motivation for being here for a short period of time, maybe just for a night, or maybe for a longer period, maybe a lifetime in a sense. And of course, I think as most of us know, the Buddha offers a very comprehensive training. Ajahn Jayasaro refers to it as an educational program, the Buddha's educational path. And if we use the teaching to the fullest, we don't ignore any one part of it, all the way from the foundational qualities that bring us a longer-term sense of happiness, virtue and precepts and non-harming, generosity, kindness, those qualities that actually are the foundation for happiness, as well as the higher training, what we call the higher trainings. I'm not sure that's actually the best word, but oftentimes that's what it's referred to. The trainings of heart and mind that develop very significantly effective mental qualities, positive mental qualities that support the development of wisdom and concentration, or samadhi, as is often translated, collectedness, composure, and the qualities of calm and insight as part of the path. So a very, very comprehensive training program that we engage in. But most of us here also come with a fairly strong predilection for the meditation practice. Maybe even a substantial portion find the entry point into the practice through the wish to develop meditation practice and an interest in how that might help relieve this dis-ease, this dukkha that we experience. What does meditation have to offer in that process? And so we come to the practice, we come to the training with a very strong inclination towards that part of it. And the way that we've been taught in a lot of circumstances, and I include myself in this in the early days of exploring the teachings, I've found that I entered into it, into the meditation practices, I think many people do, at least from talking with people over the years, with this sense of meditation as a thing you do to try and develop a mind that is going to be void, empty of any kind of disturbance. So we go into developing a meditation technique or a meditation practice or approach with that sense of, I need to get some peace of mind. I need to get me some peace of mind. I need to get rid of these annoying, intensely annoying trains of thought that just keep on invading my mind and distract me and get in the way of being peaceful. And particularly when we sit down to actually try meditation, and it's not just something necessarily in the earliest days, although it's often very prominent in the earliest days, but it can continue on for quite some time, if not almost all the time, that there's just this intrusion of disturbance into our technique or our path or the object of our meditation that we're trying to cultivate. And we think that we're failing. We think that we're not doing it right. Something is wrong when these disturbances come into our consciousness and interrupt our stillness that we're trying to cultivate. So we're looking for this very pristine state of mind through what we think of as a technique of meditation that should result in a very pristine, peaceful state of mind. And we're taught this. This is, essentially, sometimes not in quite those many words or quite so directly, but this is the implication that we're often handed in terms of developing a technique for meditation. Kind of the sit down and develop a focus that is fairly tight and unwavering on an object that can then exclude unpleasant intrusions, whether it's from the world around us, like unpleasant sounds while we're in meditation that come to disturb us, or other sensory impingements, or more likely and more consistently, the intrusions from the intellect, the mind, the thinking, the memories, the perceptions, the moods, all of the things that come into our awareness while we're trying to narrow the focus and stay with one single object in our awareness so as to not allow those intrusions to arise to disturb our peacefulness. And if we're adept at that kind of technique, and we can really have a strength or a force of mind that can do that and hold on to a very pristine object, and oftentimes it's, the breath, the breathing in and out, breathing at a very specific point in the body, very narrow kind of focus, that when something arises, a disturbance arises, we recognize it and we say, no, that's an intrusion. I'm not supposed to experience that. I have to go back to this object. I have to go back and narrow my focus back onto the tip of the nose, or the point in the belly, or the point in the chest, or whatever it is, and not pay any attention to that disturbance to my stillness. And then oftentimes we're even taught, that's the meditation technique. That's what we have to keep doing over and over again. We get lost when a disturbance comes. It disrupts our stillness, our peace of mind. We have to recognize that. That's what mindfulness is, we're told. And then come back to that focus of that narrow point in the body, or that narrow theme that we're contemplating, that object that we're trying to hold tightly, so that we don't have to experience disturbance from the sensory bases, the sense bases. And sometimes we can spend many days, months, years, perhaps even lifetimes pursuing that model. And I think that, sometimes it just becomes, for some people can do it to some extent and hold that kind of focus, but it has to be realized and noted that that's a very special kind of focus that's very dependent on very specific circumstances. And as soon as those circumstances aren't present, then that ability to control one's attention to that extent will drop away, and normal daily consciousness will arise again, and we enter into our usual mode of operation. Over the years, with people, I've seen people, monastics, who kind of hold to that particular style or belief that that's what developing samadhi is all about. That's what samadhi is. And over time, kind of give up, can't sustain it, can't cultivate it. It becomes tiring, it becomes frustrating. And rather than working towards wondering, gee, is there a different way that I can do this and get some enjoyment, just become a slow drift out of the actual practice of meditation. Sometimes finding alternatives within the tradition to how to use one's time, or leaving the monastic robes and entering to lay life again. Perhaps strong lay practitioners who aren't monastics also will continue with that particular technique for a long time and then gradually start to lose the steam to maintain it. Oftentimes, whether it's, in the monastic tradition or the lay lifestyle, it's sort of like, oh, well, I think I'll become more of an engaged Buddhist. I think I'll become more, attentive to helping society, developing qualities that are being in service and being, a bit more practical use, and even sometimes kind of reconfiguring and thinking, well, maybe this practice is just one that's developing, a sense of individual, selfish interest in peace of mind, and I need to let go of that and broaden my perspective. And it's not that service and engaged qualities of practice aren't important, and they are. All of us do that even within the monastery. We're pretty engaged Buddhists here, I think. But if one holds to that kind of paradigm of what meditation practice is all about, and it doesn't work, as it probably doesn't for many people, then one finds oneself drifting, losing faith, losing interest, losing steam to keep on pursuing the path. So what to do? In my mind, I think this kind of reframing what meditation is all about. I think that, some of these instructions that many of us have received over the years in what concentration, samadhi is all about, and what meditation technique is important to develop, and how to do that is, I think that's developed on a style of teaching that many are starting to question. And it's interesting because in the Thai forest tradition, at least to the extent that I'm familiar with it, for the most part, we don't tend to emphasize so much a method as some other traditions, specifically even within the Theravada, emphasize, where Ajahn Chah and many of the other teachers within the Thai forest tradition didn't really specifically produce a methodology that we needed to follow, but more talked about development of proper attitude. So this talk might end up sounding a little bit like Ajahn Ahimsako's "It's how you hold it," but I appreciated that idea, and probably will say some things that you've heard before from him. But it's the meditation practice can be seen in the context of an attitude rather than a technique. There are some very specific techniques out there that people find some benefit from, and that are quite well known and well honed and well practiced by people who will hold to them and swear by them and have gained great benefit. You hear about the different methods, like the Pa'ak method, or the Mahasi Sayadaw method, or the Goenka method. These are all very strong method-based teachings that people gain benefit from. But I've also encountered people who have tried them and it hasn't worked so well because that particular methodology just isn't suitable. And if it doesn't work, it becomes a source of frustration. So I've always appreciated in our tradition the emphasis on attitude rather than methodology. This kind of came up, the sort of the quality that I've been reflecting on quite a bit, just came up maybe a week or two ago in a Q&A session with one of our long-term lay supporters, a practitioner who was in a Q&A session, tea time, and she was talking about her plan to go to nursing school and develop a career, a way of a livelihood in the helping profession in nursing, and was advised by some friends or acquaintances that she's going to have to learn how to protect herself, in a sense, because some of the people that she would be working with, some of her patients, were going to be difficult and demanding, or angry, or non-appreciative, or non-compliant, or whatever it is that people can be like when they're experiencing significant health problems, and that it would be very easy for her to be overwhelmed by that and not to be able to handle that level of intensity, and that she would have to, learn how to deal with that. And her question was along the lines of, how do I develop the armor necessary? How do I develop the self-protective ways of being that I'm going to need to develop to protect myself from that kind of impact, or to protect myself from that kind of intensity that would be difficult or painful? And the response that came up to me as I was considering it was, well, that's not what you need to do. That's not the quality, that kind of protective quality, the defensiveness, setting up the shields, the barriers, isn't what you really need to learn how to do, but rather developing this kind of sense of, or quality of permeability, so that you're present when the impact comes, when the words come or the actions come that are very intense or negative, and they're received in a sense, but they're not resisted, or you don't allow them to absorb and linger and stay within the psyche. You don't let the mind, the heart, become overwhelmed by holding on to them and allowing them to come in and stay, but rather you fully experience them, but with a sense of permeability, so that they come in, they are registered, they're known within the heart, the mind, and then they are allowed to pass away. There's a certain, I was also just reading a reflection from Ajahn Jeff that talked about how when disturbances come to our stillness, rather than trying to defend against them or get rid of these disturbances in our stillness meditation, to practice being porous. And it was interesting to me that the words porous and permeability, I think, are quite similar to each other. And coincidence of reading that reflection at the same time I was bringing permeability into consideration. So it's not this kind of exclusive reactivity where we try and defend ourselves or deflect ourselves or not have to experience disturbance or difficulty. And not just in human interaction, like she was talking about how to develop, but in our meditation, it applies, I think, just as importantly, that it's that porosity or permeability of awareness that we really need to cultivate, not the sense of returning to a single focus that excludes, so as not to have to experience that disturbance that's coming into our meditation, that memory, that thought, that train of ideas that keeps hitting us, but to allow it its space. It's how you hold it, or even it's how you don't hold it, but are aware of it without pushing it away. So it is this momentary experience of whatever it is, whatever the disturbance is, but this very broad, open sense of spaciousness that allows it to move through without getting stuck. And I think that's a much superior way, in my experience, to dealing with the disturbances that come up. It's so hard because so much of our conditioning is around the way that language is used in describing some of the teachings, one-pointedness, and even the words, the descriptions of jhana, like entering into and abiding in, the first, second, third, fourth jhana, or other states of consciousness, so that it becomes a very strong conditioning from the language to, find a place in the mind that is free of disturbance and is held on to through a single exclusive focus. And that's what meditation is, and that's what developing concentration is. And when I use those words to direct my meditation, I kind of get exhausted. And I can see how it leads to so much frustration. So kind of unconditioning ourselves from that kind of approach to one that is broader and more inclusive, that doesn't isolate us from experience, but learns how to include the experiences that do arise for better or for worse, how to become permeable to all this, so that these things arise, they have a moment, we don't. We're there with them, and then they have the opportunity to move on and pass away all on their own without any kind of intervention other than clear awareness, registering, acceptance, and non-clinging, non-holding, being permeable. Another word that often comes to mind when I think about these things like this is the word anukampa, which is often translated as compassion, slightly different flavor to it than karuna, which is often translated also as compassion. But the word anukampa means kind of, there's a resonance, a trembling with, in a sense, being affected or moved, but to me also has that quality of, or should have that quality of permeability to it, so that it doesn't become a stuck kind of state of mind. So that in the process of dealing with disturbances that come up in meditation, again, rather than trying to annihilate them or resist them or have a technique of, returning to a very pristine, narrow focus, we have the sense of, okay, something that's upsetting or disturbing or just even mildly annoying coming into whatever focus I'm maintaining, this focus of breathing or consideration of some topic or theme of meditation. There's something coming in. How can I be with that? Not how can I get rid of that, but how can I be with that? Anukampa. I can resonate with it. I can feel it as it kind of causes a little bit of a ripple or a tremor in the heart, in the awareness. And you watch that shimmering quality, that energetic effect, as it kind of lands and as it has its impact, as it resonates. And then if we allow that permeability to accompany that sensitivity, then it has its effect and it moves on. And we haven't entered into a resistance mode of action, which only increases the dukkha. We're sensitive human beings, and there's a lot that impacts us, and there's a lot that comes from our own conditioning that impacts us and will arise naturally as the mind starts to settle down, as we put ourselves in a controlled situation, like sitting still for a period of meditation. It's only natural that these conditions will start to bubble up and come into our sphere of consciousness. And if we let them, they'll become disturbances. But if we can register them and know them with that kind of sense of holding lightly, with a sensitivity, being allowed to be affected by them, not deny their effect, and then not at all hold on to them in any way whatsoever, then we've really developed an incredibly effective and strong and long-lasting technique, if you will, to dealing with difficulties, with disturbances as they arise, whether it's in our meditation or just in our daily life. This is a quality that can be utilized in conversations with people. Over the past couple of weeks, since thinking about this, I've tried to use that as a tool, that just recollecting that quality of permeability when I'm in a, maybe something that might be a more difficult discussion with somebody. Just, okay, well, can I let the energy in this interaction flow in a way that's permeable, that doesn't land and grow and fester, that I don't need to get rid of? I don't need to enter into resistance to it. I can just let it be part of that natural flow. And it works. It really works. So just those qualities to keep in mind in meditation, a much more broader quality of awareness, I think, is useful probably to most of us. And that kind of sense of of holding it. How do I hold it? Back to that theme. How do I hold it? Well, I hold it with lightness, with sensitivity, with clarity, with resonance, and with porosity, permeability. Let it move through me. Keeping a full body awareness is very, very useful with that. Our grounding in the body, I find, is best when it's a broad grounding, a broad awareness of the entire body. It's here, it's present, it's not exclusive in any one point. We can really feel the resonance of the heart through our entire body. But yeah, that quality of whole body awareness, allowing our minds to gather around a theme like the body or the breathing or the qualities of the mind, all of the 4 establishings of mindfulness. This is our territory, if you will. This is our territory for reflection and our frames of reference, our themes for directing our mindfulness around. So while we're engaging in those, also establishing and keeping that strong sense of bodily presence, awareness, the qualities of permeability, of resonance, anukampa, and yeah, just that sense of allowing things to be the way they are, not buying into the need to get rid of or the need to establish ourselves in any particular state of consciousness or awareness, but just to be there, to witness. And following Ajahn Chah's very simple instructions of knowing and letting go, or even knowing and not even getting to the point where you have to let go, just not picking up. So if you, like myself, have had some conditioning around some of those early instructions of technique of how to focus the mind on a single object and don't let oneself waver, and to always come back to that, and to be establishing an exclusive absence of any kind of disturbance so that the stillness is pristine and proper and unwavering. Just encourage you to kind of loosen up a little bit, not get sloppy, not allow the mind to get distracted or drift. Keep on coming back to the unwavering quality, but in a very broad, open sense of open awareness and presence of mind that is allowing of those disturbances in a way that doesn't hold on to them, doesn't encourage them, and allows them to pass away in our meditation. And then watch to see how the mind can really just relax and settle into that frame of mind without any kind of force or trying to push away without resistance. So I'll just leave that for a few reflections for this evening.